only wants you to make good beer. And have fun hanging out with your friends. Here's Dono. Today on the program, we are doing my third pressurized fermentation, but my first cold IPA. There's a joker here who wrote this piece on the Northern Brewer blog, and let me just scroll down. So here's our friend used to brew at Day Block in Minneapolis, and he provided this recipe. So OG here, 1055. I'm aiming for a little more than that. I'm actually doing kind of a hybrid of this one and then another one. He's got pills and toasted flake rice. I have flaked rice, and I have 11 pounds of pills and 2 pounds. So I have 13 pounds instead of their 10. So I should get over 1055. But then he's got all this Azacca and Amarillo, as you can see. So I took his general idea. I'm also going to put in some sugar to just help with lightening the body, and all pills and flaked rice. So I'm just going to try to make it really light. I'm mashing right now at 150. You can see I've divided up the hops. He had these like 0.7 and 0.4 additions, and I'm like, how about 0.7 and 0.3? And he had 1.2 ounces, and I thought, how about 1? So I'm just kind of, approximating it like I do. The mash is going right now, 150 like I said. The only other shot I wanted to get is, here's all these hops. The bittering, I don't think it matters too much. I came up with this, I'll use this Magnum. And then it's going to be quite a bit at the end, so there's going to be, well, some at the end, so it'll get some more bitterness. But the other thing I wanted to show is this is one of 2 jars of washed yeast. And you can see I have a decent layer of yeast. And I'll definitely be making a starter. But whenever I do this, and actually if I think of it, I'll do a shot of hopefully the yeast starter with some bubbles and looking like it's really active. But whenever I do this washed yeast, I usually get a very good result. And also, you would have already seen maybe the first pressurized fermentation video. The second one, which I did much better job when I was able to wash that yeast, and that's what that is. That's from the Fest beer. Anyway, so basically now it's just kind of the same old until there is one different thing I'm doing with the hops. They go into the fermenter when I'm pouring the cold wort into it, and I've never done that before, so that's a different trick. But yeah, we'll get it going. So here we are about 4 hours after I made this yeast starter, and as you can see, it's looking good. You like to see some bubbles, some change of color, but I mean, it's even just been like not that long, and it'll even be hopefully better tomorrow. Alright, so here we go. I am about to add the wort into the fermenter, but this is something I've never done exactly this way. I mean, it's pretty common these days to add hops to the primary actively fermenting beer, and this is kind of a version of that, but yeah, it's got to be chilled down now, so just got to transfer it into the fermenter. Alright, the beer is, the wort is in the fermenter. It's about, geez, closer to 5.5 gallons. And that might be why my Gravity is a smidge lower. What's the temperature? 57-ish. It's about 1060, but with 13 pounds of grain, including 2 pounds of rice. And I did not film it, but I did put 2 cups of white sugar. So that is about a pound. With 13 pounds of that stuff and 2 cups of sugar, I expected to get mid to upper 1060s. I'll get a final reading, but it looks like it's going to be about over 1060, 1062. But like I said, I got a little higher on the volume. So, you know, it'll be fine. And I'm real hopeful about this yeast starter. It was looking and smelling great. We got a good temperature, and we're going to get it closed up, and hopefully it'll be fermenting later today. So it wasn't really doing much the night of brewing, but it is kind of early-ish in the morning the next day, and it's definitely doing something. It's about 60 degrees. I'll probably bring it upstairs today as it gets going. Also, the pressure is, I can't read what it's up to, but it's halfway between 0 and 15 basically, and I can control the knob, and I'll probably turn the pressure up a little bit. Actually, I like to do it in that, 10 to 15, 12 to 15 range. But yeah, it's off to a good start. I brought it upstairs and I increased the pressure because I think it was kind of set low. And then I just came over here right now and I was looking at it and I was confused because it looked like it was at like, oh, that's not gonna work. It looked like it was at like 2 or 3 or something. So imagine that right now it's at like 4 o'clock. Imagine it being at like 8 o'clock. And I was confused, and what I realized is the needle actually lapped itself and went past 15. And so the thing was actually more at like, I don't know, 20 or something. And it's only been for like an hour or so. But then I went ahead and backed this. I backed the screw out. And so now it's kind of just, what is that, like 14 or so? It's hard for me to read it. I think it's just off gassing right now. I think that's just the, well, and here's the other thing. I mean, it's a kind of a bigger gravity. Check that out, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, that's 5 or inches or so of Croissant. I mean, I still have plenty of headspace, but the that's why this thing is, it's just ripping. I mean, this is the fun thing about these beers, is even at this relatively cool temperature, but still warmer than typical for lager, is this lager fermentation. I mean, I brewed this thing yesterday morning. I pitched the yeast just a little over 24 hours ago, and I bet in about another 48 hours this is all going to be down, and it's going to be about done. So basically, I'm glad I caught the PSI 10, 11, 12, 13. It's at about 13 and a half right now. So actually, what I will do is turn this up a little bit. And so now I'll wait and I'll see if it goes up to like 14 or something. Just want to do a quick update. It is Tuesday morning. I brewed it Sunday morning. We're still at a good temperature, 64. And the Croissant got as high as up here. Currently it's more about here. but it's still hanging in there, and so it'll be interesting to see. So it's only been 2 days, but it's chugging along, and the pressure is about right under, what, 15? I'm having a hard time seeing it looking at the camera, but I think it's like 13 or 14 in that range, so that's good, and yeah, everything's going well.
Yeah, man.
What's up, everybody? We're gonna drink the Cold IPA. It's gonna be cold, 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 cold.
In the freezer?
Yeah. Woo! We're in the freezer.
Dude, you should call this Tweezer Cold IPA.
Well, it's the day block one, but yeah. All right, step into the freezer. We drank it inside to get our opinions and sensory experience, but then we thought it'd be fun to come outside where we have quite a bit of snow. We recently got about 16 inches in 2 days, which is, you know, like, I think of those poor Buffalo people, and they got like 3 feet.
Oh, I thought
once
like
or twice.
Yeah, I got like 8 feet over, I mean, like a weekend.
Yeah,
like,
that's
where does it all go when you look
news.
at this? There's nowhere else for snow to go.
It just goes up, and then it starts falling back down. And
it's very Sisyphean, whatever.
Sisyphus. Okay, so here we are. I'm very happy with this beer, and actually it's not even a month old, so it got better faster than for sure that Helles, which is not a surprise. But even this Fest beer, which you have already seen the video on that took a good 5 weeks to like get clear and get good, and this was been good like after a couple weeks. So it was 1064 down to 1.005. So the yeast did a great job having the pound of sugar and the 2 pounds of rice and the warm ferment and a good yeast starter. I mean, you wouldn't expect it to get much lower. You're getting into Saison territory. Right. But you know, it doesn't drink like it's thin, I don't think.
No. And I think that's, I don't know. It sounds backwards to think this, but I think the bitterness and those hoppy kind of fruity notes and other flavors are kind of making your palate not think it's so dry.
Maybe.
Because it finishes very, we talked about this, pineapple, tropical, orangey, a little dank, but I feel like it's just a little more fruity, but just enough. Like I told you too, like the first impression of this beer is pills. Like the first wash over your tongue is very pilsnery, and then all of a sudden the hops come in, and not in an IPL way, not to start a slap fight with the IPL versus Cold IPA, but it is a different, drier beast, but in my opinion.
Probably, I mean, I could have made the same beer with the same hops,
right?
But just without the rice, without the sugar, and then it's an India Pale Lager,
right?
And
or even with them
thicker.
And still lager. I think there's something about the fermentation temperature and the turn time that makes this a little bit more like in your face kind of beer versus like IPLs. They're hoppy, but they also feel like they've had time to kind of like find themselves.
Mine don't get a lot of time. Mine are getting put on tap when they're ready. So it's a lot of Azacca and a lot of Amarillo. Azacca, by the book, will give you fresh citrus, lemon, piney, tropical fruit. Amarillo, sweet citrus, more of the orange leaning than grapefruit, and floral. I made a couple of notes when I tasted this beer on my own. I was getting lemon, pine, I wrote down cantaloupe, grapefruit, tartness. That might have been from maybe just sort of the bitterness too, making me think like of an acidic tartness, but then also mango, pineapple, papaya for the tropical fruits. I was getting like a hint of an alcohol note, by the way. It's 7.74%.
Oh, is it?
It is.
Nice.
And it is, you know, crisp and dry-ish. But, I mean, I couldn't be happier with, like, trying to make a Cold IPA and getting this. And I did go off of the day block recipe, which I think I discussed. And I linked Chip's write-up about this style on the Northern Brewer page. You can get to that link if you go to my brew log entry.
So most of these are fermented with the lager yeast warm, but you added this element of the pressurized.
Yes.
Any thoughts as you progress towards your pressurized fermentation journey?
When we get to the fest beer, which you will already have seen, but we will drink next, you mentioned a comment of, what did you call it? Fermenter flavor? Or to the idea of the warm fermentation under pressure might give it a flavor that you might not get if it's cold fermented with no pressure. So I did use pressure on this. 12 to 14 it was pretty much the going pressure, and also it got up to as warm as in the high 60s at some point. I couldn't know how it would be different, you know, if I wouldn't have had the pressure but fermented at the same temperature. I do wonder if the same beer fermented cold traditional way or warm with pressure, a true side-by-side, same with wort grist, everything. If you did a comparison, I wonder, I mean, I think people should have done that if they haven't done that, but that would tell you if it's a noticeable difference.
Either way, this is a crispy,
yeah,
dry, hoppy, very clear beer. Like, I would not have guessed that that's... I mean, this is like West Coast IPA meets Saison without the funk.
That's a interesting... What? I mean...
That's kind of what I've thought of cold IPAs all along.
Yeah.
It's like, they're just this like champagne-y version of a West Coast IPA, which I'm
that's not
100% here for.
Too off the mark, however, I guess it's just sort of a... Like, West Coast IPAs drink dry. They just don't have maybe the adjuncts, but they still drink dry. I feel like they're even... could be more bitter than like this.
Oh, for sure.
Than this one.
In this case, yeah, where we're putting, yeah.
But anyway, no, I'm happy about this. Are you guys making cold IPAs, or do you do the
with
ale?
snow?
Do you do the ale yeast
It's gonna...
colder? Do you do the lager yeast warmer? Let us know. Also, I mean, I will just say that. My second beer, which we have yet to do, and this is my third pressurized fermentation. Like, I've been very happy with the second and the third. Even that first one, that Hellas, like, it turned out to be an okay beer, even with how the ways I messed it up. But I am digging the King Shrubby from Anvil so far, and just the pressurized fermentation. That gives me the confidence to brew lagers slightly out of my, you know, November to March or whatever, that I would hit and do like 2 a month for, you know, as much as I could. Like, that could definitely be expanded.
Consider doing like a pills in the summer and just...
Well, I've been basically, if you can keep it below 70. That's what it comes down to. So
stay tuned. April, May, June.
Yeah.
Before we get to that point.
All right. Anyway, we'll wrap this up. We'll probably go inside for the next
Did you run out of beer first?
No, you got a top off.
But not before we came out.
I didn't get a top off. This is my original pour.
Alright. Don't listen to him. He's drunk.
Excuse me? No, I've only had like... Alright, we're doing a quick bonus round. Tasting video. We're rolling. Yeah, I started recording. This is my friend Mike O'Hara, who has been a pro brewer at least 3 or 4 places.
Pitchfork, Swinging Bridge, Day Block.
Okay.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, he made this recipe. So you'll have seen me refer to Day Block Cold IPA. Now, I don't know, did you write the recipe, or was it a collaborative thing in the brewery?
I did write the recipe.
Okay.
They provided the ingredients. There was a collaborative effort on the fermentation, and like the yeast that we chose to use.
Yeah.
You know, like when I was at Swinging Bridge, I liked to use the lager yeast fermented warm, whereas at Day Block we used Kolsch fermented cold.
So the ale yeast cold, this was lager yeast warm, which you can go either way when you're doing these cold IPAs. But yeah, you were saying you like this. You think it's drinking pretty good.
This is fantastic. You nailed it for a cold IPA. You know, you get that West Coast vibe, nice dry finish, and it's I can just
keep that's
going back.
Funny because I never thought in those terms that with the cold IPA that it is kind of like a West Coast IPA as far as like the dryness and the hop impact.
Yeah.
But then also it's got this goofiness with the yeast, and then also maybe with adjuncts, which you wouldn't have in a West Coast IPA. But
Right.
I like how you put that West Coast vibe.
Yeah,
Because it's kind of dry and kind of hoppy and bitter and whatnot.
Yeah, it's definitely hoppier than a IPL, which this is not.
Yeah.
And you know that's what you look for, is like the super hoppy. And if I'm correct, that's what Wayfinder was going for, was Wester than a West Coast IPA.
Are they one of the first
They
inventors
are
of
the
the
first.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said that before and I didn't
Yeah.
know what that meant. Well, we don't have to talk too long about this, but I do want you to add in a word about your idea. Why would you think about adding the hops into the fermenter as before you're even putting the wort into it, or as you're adding the wort into the fermenter?
So first things is to cut back on hop creep. You can Google it. It's crazy. So we're trying to limit the time on that. And also, I didn't want to open up the fermenter and risk infection or anything like that during high krausen or all that. I wanted to do it adding during knockout, so that way any oxygen that was, you know, in the process is going to be used during the yeast having its party. So I felt that was, you know, pretty safe, and also add a little bit more bitterness to it and aroma, just like, I guess, going for like a Northeast dry hop style, you know, where you're,
New England.
yeah, biotransformation.
Yeah, it's probably, I mean, it's probably hard to say, but the effect may not have been that much different than just adding them in like 2 days later.
Right.
I mean, I don't know, but maybe.
So basically, it's just a mad
Huh.
numbers game at that point, where I'm taking 2 days off of that hop creep, and like, you know, you're in that maturing level already, 2 days
Yeah.
ahead of the schedule.
Yeah.
But the biotransformation is key, where you get the citrusy notes really popping, especially on going for that West Coast vibe. You want it
Yeah.
to, like, you know, remind you of like Two Hearted or Pliny the Elder or something, with that crisp lager drinkability.
Yeah. No, I'm glad. I mean, when I first posted that I made a cold IPA, you commented, and I said I did your recipe. Like, oh, I want to try it. I'm like,
Yep.
you will try it. We'll get you over here. So here we did it, and yeah, he's got a good cider. He's actually a distiller for. You want to talk?
Yeah.
Plug your new business.
So we're over at O'Shaughnessy Distilling now in Minneapolis, right next door to Surly. Come check us out. We're doing some great things, great cocktails. We do have some vodka and gin for some folks that aren't into whiskey and bourbon. But
And it is a tasting room where you can walk in and
Yep,
get a drink.
absolutely you
Okay.
can. And we also have a food menu too.
Oh.
Shareable items, there's a couple substantial things on the menu, but it's mainly, when you walk in, it's very loungy. So
Okay.
it's like,
Well,
you
I
come
will
check
have
us
to.
out.
I will have to get in there myself.
Absolutely, anytime.
Figure out when we can do that. So anyway, that wraps up my third pressurized fermentation, my first cold IPA. Cheers.
Cheers.
I'm gonna stop this camera.
Clean
And
plate Ranger.
Catch you later. What does that mean?
That means I finished my beer.
Oh,
Finished my
okay.
plate.
All right. Okay. Oh.